In 11.5, we're going to multiply and divide rational expressions. And I'm going to say this a lot, but rational just means fraction. So the same rules for multiplying and dividing fractions are going to be applied here. So remember that when you multiply fractions, you don't need a common denominator. But we've got some pretty involved fractions here in these examples that I gave. So what we're going to do is factor everybody. So always factor everything you can. And then you're just going to cross out or cancel out any common factors, but it has to be the entire parentheses. And just like in fractions, you never simplify straight across. So don't cross things out that are next to each other. Any top and any bottom. So let's take a look at the first one. X plus 2, I can't do anything with that. So I'll bring it down, but I will put them in parentheses so that I remember that it's a whole thing. But underneath it, these two have an x in common. So I'm going to factor out an x, and I'm left with an x plus 1. In the top up here, x squared minus 1, that's a difference of 2 squares. So it's x and x, and then it's a plus 1 and a minus 1. And on the bottom, I can factor this with 2 parentheses. Two numbers that multiply to 6 and add or subtract to make 5 could be 3 and 2 or 6 and 1, but if everybody's positive, I'm going to have to use 3 and 2. Okay, so now I get to start crossing things out. So I have an x plus 2 and an x plus 2 that can go away. I have an x plus 1 and an x plus 1. And then anything that's left, remember when you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. So the only thing I'm left with in the top is x minus 1. And in the bottom, I have an x and an x plus 3. Don't multiply them together. Just leave it in parentheses. Just less work for yourself. Okay, so now let's try the next example. 4p in the top, I can't do anything with that, so I'm going to leave it as 4p. The denominator, I can factor p minus 3 and p plus 1. P squared minus 9 is the difference of 2 squares, so p plus 3, p minus 3, and p plus 1 I can't do anything with, but I will put them in parentheses. Now, I put this in parentheses because it's really important to remember that this p plus 1, this p is connected. I cannot simplify it with that one over there, okay? That is not allowed. So putting entire terms in parentheses helps you not try to break them apart. So I can simplify p minus 3, p minus 3. Now these p plus 1s are next to each other, and I cannot simplify across, just a top and a bottom. That's it, sadly. Nothing else cancels out. So I'm left with 4p and p plus 3 on the top, and then p plus 1 times p plus 1 on the bottom, or you could write it as p plus 1 squared on the bottom if you want to be fancy. But I'd be okay if you left it like this. Okay? We'll say or, you could write it like that. Alright, so that's multiplying. Now, let's do the same idea, but this time we're going to divide. Okay, so remember that when you go to divide fractions, remember dividing fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So keep, change, flip. So you keep the first fraction, change the division to multiplication, and flip the second fraction. Okay? So this becomes m squared minus 1 over m squared. I leave that alone. But then I change the division to multiplication, and then I flip the second fraction. Now it's the same thing we were doing before. Now we factor everybody that we can. I have a difference of 2 squares on the top here, so m plus 1, m minus 1, m squared, m plus 1. Alright, so what can I simplify? Well, I can do m plus 1 and m plus 1. Now I am allowed to simplify the m and the m squared. This is m to the first. So remember, when you simplify variables like this, you subtract the powers. So 1 minus 2 is going to leave me with a 1m left in the bottom. So what's left in the top? M minus 1, and in the bottom, just an m. And again, you cannot simplify those two m's because the top one is connected to that negative 1. Don't try to break it up, keep it in parentheses. Alright, let's try the next ones. Keep the first fraction. Change dividing to multiplying, and flip the second fraction. Always factor. Can't do anything there. But in the bottom they have a 2 in common, so I can take a 2 out. These parentheses. And now let's see what can start canceling out. Y minus 9, y minus 9, and that's it. Y plus 3, and 2y. Okay, so that's multiplying and dividing. You don't need a common denominator, but you must factor everybody before you start crossing stuff out.